And today, though, in our study, we've gotten to Exodus chapter 21, and that talks about slavery. So that gives us a chance to slow down just a bit and deal with it, because there are many passages in the Bible that do talk about slavery. And because that's such a sensitive issue, then we wanted to be very careful with it and not treat it lightly. And Steve, before we get in, we just want to reassure our listeners that we're not trying to make light of the issue of slavery. It's very serious, it's very painful, and because of it, that's one reason we wanted to be so careful with what we're doing with the Word of God.
Yeah, it is sensitive, and one of the reasons why it's sensitive is that because it's a part of our recent history, and recent I'm saying in the last 200 or 300 years, and it was definitely a system and a way that was used where people were kidnapped, bought and sold and traded from across the globe in various different areas. And we're going to put into context regarding what was going on at the time, what is actually said here in relation to it. But no, in no way, shape, form, or fashion are we justifying slavery or anything else like that. We're just putting it into context in regards to what's going on as we go through Exodus here, because it's the giving of the law, and this happens to be one of the first things past the 10 Commandments that is dealt with.
Right. And so before we really just jump in with both feet into the passages, I just wanted to take a brief moment and give two things. First of all, just a summary of all of what we're doing, because this will take a while. We're assuming it's going to take more than one session here. And so we're going to go into these things at great length. And so just a quick summary, so that you'll know kind of where we're going with this. The Bible does indeed talk about slavery, and we're going to deal with all of the passages that deal with that, at least the ones that tend to come up. Much of what we're doing today is not just explaining the text, but because there's such a sensitivity, and rightfully so, there's a lot of pain involved in slavery, and in modern mind, it's especially acute. And so what we want to do is deal with that, but also add some historical context, because what many of our friends in the skeptic, atheist, and critical community will take a verse, a passage, and make it look like that's the entire Mosaic law dealing with that one verse or that one passage. And really nothing could be further from the truth. The Mosaic law is all of Leviticus, all of Deuteronomy, part of Numbers, and part of Exodus. And so there's a lot there, and you really have to take it as a whole. And because it's long and somewhat tedious, many people just don't take the time to balance these things. What you can't do is take a verse, a passage that, yes, that one verse may say that, but you have to compare that to the rest of the Mosaic law. So that's what we're going to try to do here today. And we're also going to talk about, in Hebrew, the word that is often translated slave or bondslave or servant. The Hebrew language has fewer words in it than the English language. And because of that, English has a lot more words to nuance meaning. The word there that is used for slavery is used about 800 times in the Old Testament. And the vast majority of the time, that word is not talking about chattel slavery, just owning people. Sometimes it is, and we'll go through those passages. Sometimes it does talk about owning people, and we're going to deal with that. There's a reason for it, and it's not always the reason why people think today. Most of the time when the word's used, it's talking about just servants. It's just talking about servants. So we have to look at the passages and distinguish between the times when it talks about a servant and the time when it talks about a slave, and what does it really mean there. Most of the time, it's not talking about people being, like we think of slavery, people being kidnapped against their will and forced into long, hard labor and put under abuse. There's systems in place in the Mosaic law to prevent all of that type of slavery. Our skeptical and critical friends, the nicest thing we could say is a half-truth. It's a half-truth, because simply and a half-truth is a lie, because when you look at the fuller picture, the picture of slavery in the Mosaic law is not what the average person today thinks of.